Brian, if you want.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. So we'll call to order the January first meeting of the year for the Parks Board. We'll do a roll call here real quick. Brian Amer, that's me. I'm here. Is John Clifford?
Yes.
John here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, John. Joy is here, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Joy. Steve.
Yes, hello.
Steve. Brian is here.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Here.
Donovan is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Rodney.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Rodney. Manny. Manny's not here, right?
No.
And David is here. Yeah.
Here.
Hey, David. All right, great. Okay, so number 2 is the adjustments to the agenda. Does anybody have anything to change about the agenda that was sent out earlier today?
Brian, all I was going to suggest was to either add an update from Scott from the YMCA to the agenda, or we can handle that under other, whichever one you prefer to do.
Yeah, I think that's good. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, let's add an agenda topic after the approval of the minutes, or we can have Scott give us a YMCA update so he doesn't have to hang out for the whole meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Okay, so number 3 is the approval of the minutes from last month. I read over the minutes. I didn't have any adjustments to the minutes. Did anybody else have a chance to read over and maybe make any corrections or anything from last month? Nope.
I didn't see any issues. I'd move to approve them, please, the minutes.
Okay, great. And I'll second that as well. Like I said, I read them as well. I didn't see any changes to make. Okay, so the motion to approve the minutes. Let's bring it to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any objections? All right, great. So the minutes last month have been approved. And as we said, let's have Scott, since you're on, thanks for joining us. Let's have, if you'd like to give us an update on the YMCA, that would be great before we get into the rest of the agenda topics.
Sure. And if anybody feels like they have questions or any of that, don't hesitate to ask. I want to make sure that you guys get all the information that you want. Just give you kind of an overview. A lot hasn't changed in terms of our operating hours and those types of things. We're still Monday through Saturday and still closed on Sunday. As I've shared with Kristen and others, a lot of that has to do with staffing and usage. Right now, one of the biggest challenges we're facing, just like everybody around here, is just the variant that's been spreading. It's been going through staff, and obviously with people being home for the holidays, we imagine that'll be a challenge coming in to January again. We have a lot of youth programs starting up that are going on right now that take place in our gym. The tricky part with those is, as competitive organized sports, those kids are not required to be masked. So that's another one that on our radar is going to be a big question mark as we move forward. Some of the bigger pieces that I know this group was concerned about as we move to the winter was pickleball, which did start up again 2 days a week in the afternoons for about 4 hours a day on, I want to say it was Monday and Wednesday, with the potential to add Friday at the end of the new year or moving into the new year, depending on usage. So we've been tracking that, and if there's a need, we'll absolutely do that. We also planned in January to start just more adult sports in the evening. So we wanted to have a night for pickleball, have a night for volleyball, potentially basketball, obviously would be a couple nights a week. So really just trying to see what the community wants and responds to, and then try to get those up and running. But I know pickleball has always been a big one. And obviously the weather has clearly taken a turn for the worst over the past 2 weeks. Yeah. So people have wanted to come inside and play. So like I said, those are I think the big highlight from a recreational standpoint, especially for things that we have talked about in the past. Do you guys have questions about what's going on in the facility, or any thoughts that you'd like to add about anything that we might need to add from a community perspective?
No, I appreciate the update. Anybody, any board members have any questions? That was a good update. Thanks for that.
I just quickly ask a clarifying question. I'm assuming that the pickleball hours at the Y are in addition to the ones that they currently use our existing fields for, or existing courts. Is that right?
Yes.
That's correct. They're just not getting much usage right now with the weather.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and to be honest, at the very beginning, they weren't as well attended. I fully anticipate that'll pick up after the holidays and into January. But we'll see. I still think the population is a little concerned with COVID, and they do need to wear masks because they don't fall under the youth competitive sport guidelines. So, little tricky things here and there that might clear up as we move further into 2022, but trying to do whatever we can to allow them specified times where the gym is theirs for their use, and they've got the space reserved for them.
Great.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Any other questions for Scott? That was a good update. We appreciate you dialing in for the meeting.
Yeah, Kristen, is it normal procedure for me to stay on these, or just to provide the update, or?
It's completely up to you. We'd love to have you stay on, but if you've got other things going on, that's fine too.
I'm happy to stay on.
Yeah.
I haven't been anywhere else. I'd love to just hear more to help figure out how we can serve. So.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Okay, so so that was let's say agenda topic 3.5. So we're in topic number 4. I don't think we have any citizen comments this month, right?
We do not.
Okay. All right, great. So number 5, the Cedar Creek Trail updates, and Jason is not on tonight. So Kristen, you said you had an update. I assume they're maybe stopped over there because of all the weather and the flooding. I haven't seen very much construction going on in the past couple of weeks.
Right, not a lot of activity. Yeah, just a few updates from Jason. The contractor did submit a formal request for a time extension, which is being reviewed. And that would mean that the final completion for the project would be May 27th, which is the day before Memorial Day. So that's what we're looking at now, and staff is reviewing that. Staff is also working on updating our CIP, our capital improvement plan and project list. And in February and March, we will be discussing that at further length. I mean, one of the things we talked about doing tonight is going over our priorities and what it has in the master plan for the next 1 to 5 years. So we'll be looking at what projects we're able to add to the project list that are high priority for the Parks Board. And that is really all that Jason had.
All right, great. Great, thanks for that update. So then, yeah, moving on, the next one is the Parks Master Plan. We talked about this last month to review the action plan and to go over kind of picking what our priorities are for this year based on what we agreed were high priority items in the master plan. So Kristen, do you want to just like how would you like to work this agenda? Would you just want to go through you just want to go through the list here? And
yeah, what I thought might be good to do is to start just looking at the action plan. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to pick up their Parks Master Plan. Not too much has changed on this portion since we had delivered one some months ago. But just a reminder, they are available for all of you at City Hall to be picked up at the front desk at the front reception area. But looking at the master plan, the action plan on page, at the very beginning on page 6, actually it's before we even get to the real 6, it's Roman numeral 6. You can take a look at what we're supposed to be focusing on for the next 1 to 5 years. And that's what I thought would be helpful, is how much of that really resonates. I don't think that too much has changed, but even within that 1 to 5 years, what's going to be 5 and what's going to be year 1. So I thought we could just kind of go through them one by one. A lot of them have to do more with relationships, or this first one is talking about exploring new joint use agreements with Sherwood School District. We talked about that at the last meeting when we conducted our SWOT review, just that we need to continue having those conversations and see if there's an opportunity for future partnership. So I think that's an immediate thing, but there's nothing obviously that we need to specifically budget for it. Looking at the CIP funding and talking more about 10-minute park access and making sure that we're having amenities added at those parks. A lot of this has to do with the theme that we heard over and over during the master planning process of trails and connectivity. So a lot of this is just making sure that we're keeping that in mind as we're planning. Revisit park and open space locations. And please stop me if you want to discuss one further, but if not, I'm just going to go through them. Revisit park and open space location sizes, classifications when updating the Sherwood West concept plan. That's in process right now. So that's something that is underway, us updating that and completing the Sherwood West concept plan. So that will be done as part of that process. Again, endorsing the 10-minute walk campaign. And that's something that, we can really do through advertising and hyping up our trails and accessibility, and making sure that people are knowing about the connectivity and the trails that are out there and making sure that they're maintained well. Pursue CIP funding for Tier 1 park improvements. So this would be us going back and looking at our Tier 1 priorities and park improvements and what we want to do, and whether that's making sure it's included in the CIP or looking for grant opportunities, looking for partnership opportunities. But that's listed in the next 1 to 5 years as well. Trail expansion and asset management projects. And this goes back to some of the asset management plan that Public Works had brought to us and that Craig had put together, and making sure that we're taking a look at what enhancements need to be done on trails for that. Wayfinding project, trail wayfinding project. This is something that the city had looked at years ago. David may have actually remembered talking about this, but we had gone through and actually had a wayfinding plan done at the city. And wayfinding is basically, does everybody know what wayfinding is? Fancy signs that tell you where to go. But they're all coordinated and look really nice. And we basically had this whole feasibility study or plan done, and then honestly realized, well, we can't really afford to do all of that. So it was scaled back. But it's a good opportunity for us to look again and see, how are we branding ourselves? What's the common theme we want to have? What can we do in terms of wayfinding to have that connectivity again, and encouraging people to get out and find areas and have clear directions.
Are we going to have to update that for the Cedar Creek? So as people come out of Cedar Creek?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So depending on where we have our different access points and feeder trails, we're going to need to work on that there as well. And then just making sure that, as we update our wayfinding, that's all included.
Kristen, aside from the lack of funding, as I recall, there was a whole signage issue for the whole city that they wanted it to be consistent. And that's the last that I remember. And then I was off the board. And then, so that's how I recall is that we were kind of
Yeah.
looking for consistency throughout all the signage.
Yes, exactly. And it may be that we look at some of the themes that are already occurring. So we had those monuments downtown that have now, some of them have been taken out, the ones that were right on the street corners, but that had that theme of the blue signs with kind of the trees in the background pointing you in certain directions. That was all part of the wayfinding project, but only some of it got implemented. Then as we updated our park signage, that does look slightly different, but we have been consistent and tried to update, the entrance of Snyder Park and Langer Park and made sure that there's some consistency there. So you're right, David, it's going to be a challenge to get it all looking nice and working together, and costly potentially to do it all at once. So we might have to phase it in. But that's something that as we're doing projects, as we're opening trails, we can make sure that we're doing our best and just keep updating as we go.
Yeah, and of course there are the new, relatively new signs, wayfaring signs in Old Town and in Stella Olson Park and other places that have the city map on them and where you are on the map, and I think we should be considering those for future trails as well.
Right. Yep. Yep. Another one we had on here was adding bike parking at 3 parks. That's an easy one, obviously. And David remembers from way back when. Again, when we started becoming a requirement as we built parks or as we modified parks, we needed to have covered bike parking at all of our parks. And one of his son's Eagle Scout project was to actually, we have 2 of them now.
Both of them, yeah, both my boys got their Eagle Scout projects with that.
Yeah. So that was a great one, and one that we can continue to promote because it's worked out really well to have the Eagle Scouts participate. Tammy has been involved in that as well. She's giving a thumbs up on that and has helped from a volunteer coordination standpoint. So that's an easy win, not a big ticket item. Secure parks in Brookman concept plan area, including parks programming and design. So this is something that we talked about during our SWOT analysis, as well as just taking a look at that Brookman area and helping identify what areas we want to focus on and how much space we really need. When Julia visited, she showed the master planning for that area and how much land had already been kind of imagined, not necessarily those exact parcels, but what had been planned. And you can, if you remember, there was quite a bit of space, really park space. And so it's us now taking a look at that plan, going out, putting some options potentially on property and making sure that we're able to secure some of that park land and open space.
If I recall, that was one where we got some comments from some folks in the community about where the parks were going to be and what land was going to be used.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is the same area where there was kind of a swath or an area of trees that some neighbors really wanted to make sure were being protected.
Right.
Not necessarily a large enough space to develop a park, but more open space and protected areas we're focusing on.
And as we're looking at that item and the one about Sherwood West, is there any way we can incorporate open space as well as parks, or are we only doing more traditional types of city parks?
We definitely want to look at and incorporate open space, take a look at, what makes sense. And there's a lot of space, honestly, that's not developable that does make sense to just have as open space, and that will really help and be important for the feel out there. So they don't need to just be active parks.
Okay,
for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Kristen, if I remember right, in that area, there's a lot of what's designated wetland, isn't there?
Yep.
That's pretty low. So yeah, they can't develop it. And that's one of the things they're real happy to donate to us,
Right.
usually the contractors, because they can't do anything with it.
Right. So it appears it's probably not going to be too much of a fight for us to get park space. It's just going to be more of what do we want for active space. There's going to be, should be plenty of open space, as David mentioned, by the amount of wetlands that are there.
Cool.
Yeah, Kristen, I know I put this in the chat box too, but if you guys have stuff that would benefit being in the Y or on the Y website that promotes this type of stuff,
Okay.
obviously they might have crossover with who's looking for what, but we have a pretty active group that, uses the Y website. So having, park maps or downloadable things like that would probably be helpful.
Okay, great.
So just FYI.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate that. Another thing that has continued to come up and did make it in for the next 1 to 5 years is another dog park. There's been comments over the years. Our dog park is great. It's in a beautiful location. There's been a desire for a grass park, whereas ours is chips. Or excuse me, I'm the other way around. Ours is grass.
Ours is grass. Yeah.
Yes. There's been a desire for chips. And one of the reasons why we did not do chips was at Snyder Park. It's on a bit of a slope, and the chips would end up at the bottom of the hill, potentially. And we'd constantly be raking and moving those around. But there's been some thought that if we had chips similar to what some of the other cities have done, such as Tualatin, you could keep it open longer into the wet season. There's downfalls to chips though as well. Some people feel like they spread disease more and aren't as clean and hygienic. So on top of wanting to have a variety of surfaces, we also want to look at getting potentially another dog park on the other side of Highway 99. So just making sure that it is more equitable as well, and that people may not have to come as far. So I would say that, that's something that isn't necessarily going to happen in the next year, but in the next couple of years should probably stay as a high priority, just because it has been talked about quite a bit, and the dog park is used quite a bit as well. This next one's all Tammy. Tammy doesn't have a book in front of her, but it's expand volunteer opportunities. So anytime that we're looking at expanding programming, expanding trails, expanding parks, there's always volunteer opportunities. So that's something that we need to continue to keep in mind and look at ways that we can expand our program and how volunteers can be utilized in what we're doing. Add a natural resource manager is another one that was listed here. I talked to Craig about that today, and I wanted to make sure that he and I were on the same page and had the same understanding of what that means. Craig is our public works director, and he said that really most of what needs to be done as a natural resource manager, they can absorb and do within public works, and they have the staff to do that. Years ago, like back when I started 20 years ago, we actually had a natural resources manager on staff, but we did not have nearly as large of a parks department as we do now, or public works department. So that really, those duties got folded in, and with our water waste management program and everything that we're doing now, we can absorb those duties. So we don't think it necessarily needs to be a separate position added into the budget at this point, but still something to keep in mind and make sure that we're accomplishing everything we need to in that area. Another opportunity is establishing a nonprofit Parks and Arts Foundation, and this is another way to potentially raise funds and or qualify for grants that are out there. So just something to keep in mind. There are plenty of cities that have park foundations or a nonprofit in addition to having a board, whereas a board serves as an advisory, the nonprofit becomes the fundraising arm, if you will. So if you're looking to do improvements or do a lot of different things, then you need to have that nonprofit status, and you can qualify for grants that you can't qualify for otherwise. Another thing we've talked about is potentially establishing a percent for art program. And if you're familiar with a percent for art program, it means that a percent of your capital improvement project for public buildings needs to go towards art. That's really something that we've always, at least in the most recent projects, have done anyways, is making sure that there are art elements within our public projects. But this would be, what else can we do to expand that? What can we do to build a public art program? And this is seen as one of the opportunities to do that. And we feel that there's a big correlation between parks and public art and ways that we can incorporate that. One of the projects that we've looked at and thought about is down at Cannery Square. If you remember, there's a flat area just to the left if you're facing the water feature, that where the water comes down the stairs. To the left, there's kind of a flat platform area. That area was actually designed to hold some type of a sculpture and was cut from the budget, the sculpture itself, at the last minute. So that's one of the things that we've talked about at the Cultural Arts Commission, is what can we do to get something there, and what would that look like? But that's what it was actually designed for. Updating the park SDCs methodology. That's something that we're in the process of working on. We talked about that in the last couple of meetings as well. We actually hope to have a kickoff meeting later this week about that. So we'll have more information in our February meeting. I also talked to Craig about this one. This was Design Snyder Park Playground Renovation. I went into his office and was like, how is this possible? I feel like we just built this park. And he said that no, it isn't as part of their asset management plan, that in the next 5 years, so probably year 4, year 5, we do need to look at replacing some of the elements within that park and take a look at what we want to have there and what it's going to look like. We know that a few different pieces of play equipment were closed recently, and we had a hard time getting parts. So it's been 15 years. So it's time for us to start thinking about that and planning, and probably 4 or 5 years before we actually do it. But I can't believe it. It's already here. And then the last thing, and Scott will be interested in this, that we had on the list for the 1 to 5 years, is renegotiating or looking at the YMCA agreement. This is something that we've talked about as well over the last, at the last couple of meetings, that really the agreement that we have with the YMCA is set to come due for renewal in a couple of years. And we really need to look at where are we going from here, and what does that mean, and what does that relationship look like, and that partnership, and what about the pool expansion? And has that been completely tabled, or is that something that we still want to look at? And are there opportunities to expand that pool as we discussed? So that is everything that was on the list for 1 to 5 years. I know we went through a lot of information, but as I mentioned, there's not too many in there that are going to really impact our CIP list or our capital improvement list for this next year. But I did want to make sure that we went over them all and see if there's anything that we're missing too, that somehow has come up since we've done all of this work, and if there's anything we want to add. And Brian, I don't know if you can see, Scott has his hand up. So
yeah, thanks. Yeah, Scott.
Sorry, I don't want to just jump in with this, but Kristen, since I wasn't on board at the time, was there work done by the city for potential pool expansion? I recall before Ryan left that there was some work done by the city council in terms of, and it might have been involving this group too, in terms of gauging interest in that expansion from the community's perspective.
Yeah, there was some gauging interest, as well as it was a joint effort. There was people from the YMCA and from the city that sat on a committee, including myself, to talk about what that could look like. How many lanes would we need? What could that look like on the site? How would we make that all happen? We went and did a pool visit down in Newburgh to look at what they've built down there. So yeah, there was from both sides, there was some work done on it.
Okay, yeah, we can go up to Clark County and look at our pool up there too. It's got a lap pool and then a separate smaller one. But yeah, this is on our radar too, as well from a YMCA perspective, just for you guys to know. This isn't just a city thing. We're definitely interested in it as well.
Great.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So with the going through this with the review here, I'd like to do a couple things here. I, as we talked about last month, I'd like us to talk about if we can do a work session this month, depending on the weather, or next month, where we actually go out to see probably 2 places where we could potentially have parks or natural areas. As we talked about in the past couple of months, maybe it's in the Brookman area or in on the other side of 99. I think we should focus on as well. So I'd like to have a quick discussion about that, and then also, as Kristen mentioned earlier, we'd like to have a couple of things on this list here that are going to be our goals for this year, and I'd like them to be sort of on the agendas every month, just so we don't lose sight of them, right? So, those couple of things. So if anybody has any thoughts about either of those 2 items, whether what day might work for for a work session to go look at parks or potential parks like we talked about last month, or if anybody has any thoughts about which of these items that Kristen just went through we want to promote, maybe make sure they're on our agenda for this year, so that they're on our agendas every month, so we talk about them. So I'll just open that up to if anybody has any thoughts about that, either of those items.
I got.
Yeah, Ryan. Yeah.
Rodney or Brian?
Yeah, Rodney, you had your hand up first. Go for it.
Okay. I just as Chris was right in saying them off, I wrote the list really quick of what I thought was the most priority. I think going for a walk and looking around Brookman would be great, to give us all an idea there. I think it's a high on our list because I think it's the most action going on right now. Setting up that nonprofit, I think, would probably be a high priority, just because it's probably going to take a bit of time to set up and then start fundraising and get going. So better to start sooner than later. Wayfinding, being new to Sherwood, 3 years now, I guess. We actually had a hard time finding our way around and finding different things. And it took us 2 years to know that we had a, whatever we call the indoor sports field, because we didn't even know it was there. So it would be interesting to have some wayfinding. I think it would bring local tourists to town, especially if we could make it into stuff. I know my kids, when they first got here, they did the Sherwood Elf, I think it is, or you go around all the businesses and it's Sherwood, where's Waldo? You have to go around all the different businesses and find Waldo. Well, if we had something to do with the parks like that, to get people to go to every park, I'm sure you'd find a park that you like more than what you did before, or surprise you. Like there's a couple little parks out there. Geocaching, I know it's kind of older now, but if you can get people doing that, lots of cities have people coming to town to do that. Walk Sherwood, it's a walkable city. Be great to have people coming here for a Sunday to walk around, go to our local stores and enjoy the cities, or bike Sherwood if we could promote that. So I think the wayfinding is bigger than we think, because that also all the new parks are coming on will get put in right away. YMCA planning for me is a big one, because I think it's going to take a long time, so we should start on it. And then the Red Barn, is that what we're calling that property? It wasn't on the list, but I think now that we have it, is that part of parks? Is that part of city? It would be nice to have that on there somehow. And then the Sherwood West Parks plan, it's on the list, but it's a ways out. So it's got to be thought about, but I don't think it needs to take priority over many other things.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. And I'm going to echo what Rodney said about the wayfinding. I think that's a really cool. Like you said, there's a lot of potential there, a lot more than just look. I can find my way from one trail to another. A lot of potential. I think if we choose at least a couple of our quick wins, I noticed there's about 5 things here that are marked as quick wins in our plan. Like maybe, focus on a couple of quick wins to get done this year, and then yeah, like start some of the planning for some of the larger things to be completed, in the coming years. Also, I do think that the Brookman thing is a big deal. Also, I agree, and I think we should get down there sooner rather than later. And we should also at least start thinking about what we want to do with Sherwood West, so that we don't wind up in a place where we are with. I shouldn't say it. We should try to avoid having too many we should have's with that one if we can help it.
Yeah.
I know I for one am a little bummed about the old growth trees down there in Brookman, and the first I heard of it was when folks made comments about it. Not that I've been on the board that long, but I'd love to get in front of any stuff like that going forward. It's a great idea to do. So thinking about that stuff now is probably a good idea. But as far as the quick wins go, yeah, I think endorsing the walk campaign and the wayfinding are good ones to start hitting, and the bike parking at a few parks seems like you said, like kind of a quick hit, easy win. So if we want to maybe think about those for the year.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Steve, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I don't know that I would echo the wayfinding thing, but I'm not so much of a global person that everything in the city has to look the same, because when you can't even find something, it doesn't matter what the sign that's out there doesn't look like. What you need is a sign, and I'm thinking of a couple of pathways that there are. Obviously, there's a beginning and there's an end, or there's an end and there's a beginning, and there's a couple middle connections. None of them have signs, but it's a pathway that's behind a subdivision. It's maintained and operated by the city, and people walk by it all the time and probably have no idea there's a pathway there. So as simple as basic stuff that I believe our street maintenance folks can make. Very simple signage works for today till you get to some global expensive thing that may never happen. But still, so that's where I come from on that. Sure, it'd look nice, it'd be wonderful if it all looked the same and we can make a flyer and a brochure and show everybody all that. But today, a lot of things are just plain missing, and maybe because nobody ever thought of it. I think I know that in years past, the city has been short of operating funds. I don't know how that works at the moment, how life works. But a number of times the city manager had the proposed budget for next year, not including all the items that were in the plan developed by Public Works that we should be on a schedule and maintaining. And I know I've testified in front of council and the budget committee that we really need to take care of what we have, and you can't get behind, and we have a plan and we need to do that. So I don't have a connection with that at the moment, but I hate for that to happen. And because we all know how important it is to maintain our houses and our cars and things. So it's the same for a city. If you let things go, they won't look nice and you have to replace them sooner. Anyway, so I think we need to develop a connection there somehow before the city's budget is proposed, and we may or may not be in line to get the funds to maintain things like we need to. How that happens, I don't know, but I'm more than willing to help with that. And then, yes, I believe getting out, touring, looking, figuring things out, And I think if we're going to make this board, and Russell talked about it quite a bit last time, if we're going to move forward with things, we need to get involved, and we need staff to certainly help us with that, to know where we need to go or what we need to be doing. And it's going to take a lot more time and effort. So that's probably all I got for the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, so are there any other comments from anybody else online about the sort of the goals for this year? Because I think we've kind of it seems like we're coalesced around looking at potential new park space or natural area space, and then signage came up a lot, and then obviously wanting to keep the YMCA on our radar as well. So if it sounds like those maybe are the three things we want to have on our agenda, on our goals for this year. Does that seem like what people are leaning towards? Right, great.
And Brian, if I can just add real quick, just following up on Steve's comments, I feel that since Craig's team has developed the asset management plan, that has really helped make sure that we are taking care of what we have. It felt like before that was developed, every year was a bit of a fight. And now that they have the plan in front of them, they have seemed much more agreeable to making sure that there's money being set aside and that we're taking care of those needs, and we're actually budgeting for it and know what it's going to be every year. There's no promises there, of course, but it does seem like it's gone a little bit better, or much better, the last couple of years. So that's something that we can review again. That's something that Harry and I can talk to Craig about. What is in the plan for the next year, CIP, as well as through the capital or the asset management plan, and what do we plan on doing there, and what's going to be included. Then we can make sure that we're paying attention and know what those sticky areas might be. Make sure you guys know what those projects are. Make sure you're aware of budget meetings. If we think we're going to need some people to come and testify or reinforce, then just making sure that we're keeping everybody in the loop there.
Great. So yeah, and I would like to bring up, before we get off this topic, as we talked about having a work session, and we haven't done that before, except a remote work session, except for the times where we've looked at the Cedar Creek Trail, which was kind of a replacement meeting. But we'd like to have, as we talked about, a chance to go out and look at potential parks. So, Kristen, how would we schedule that? Would we do that offline and just email people, or what would you?
Yeah, basically, we can pick a time and a date that we want to do that. My thoughts are just making sure we get the timing right if we want to go out and look at stuff. If there's property owners out there who may not necessarily be interested in selling, or we haven't had those conversations, or we don't want to show our cards quite yet, they may not want 6 people, 10 people showing up on their property or standing out on the street checking things out. So I want to make sure that we get the timing right. And I will say that we are going to be in contact with or have been in contact with a real estate person who may be able to help us with some of this. And we're actually going to have a meeting later this week with the city manager and a couple other people on our team to look at potential properties and have them start doing some investigation. So it might work best for me to first get some information from her, and for her to do some of that legwork. so that we figure out who's even interested. So like I said, I would want to be respectful of people's space and not be circling their property or showing up on a Saturday and have them wondering what the heck is going on.
But does that include the Brookman area though? What, or is that includes the Brookman area that we talked about in previous meetings? Okay.
Right. I mean, yes, yeah. I mean, something like that. The property that I already visited in the Brookman area, that would be one thing because they contacted us and they're interested. So it really just depends on where we're at with each person and that conversation. I just want to make sure that we're thinking about the timing of that and how we make that work.
Right, but our involvement with this would be finding the land and then making the recommendation to council, right?
Sure. Yep.
So we're not we wouldn't be to the point of making any sort of, decision for the city. We would just be making a recommendation for the city, right?
Right. Yes.
Does that change does that affect the timing that you just talked about, or
I
do you
think
still
that
want?
I think it's completely appropriate for individuals, or even if you wanted to go with one other person, to be out and just drive around, become familiar with the area. If there's any areas that you're interested in letting us know, like, hey, this looked pretty good, then we can do that. If not, what we're going to be doing on a city level is sitting down with a parcel map and taking a look at how big is each parcel, what areas are we interested in, who do we know is an absolute no-go, we're not interested in selling, who do we know that says, hey, let's have some conversations and start making some marks there.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to look at those areas as a board.
Yeah.
But I'd like to get the board's opinion on this as well. So if there are any thoughts about this, speak up if we'd like to.
The other part that can become a little bit sticky at times is the city is, some people at times try to take advantage of the fact that the city is the buyer and they see deep pockets. And so that's what I'm talking about when I say,
Oh, okay.
We need to be somewhat cautious about how we're approaching people and what we're doing in specific areas.
Okay.
Because sometimes that can be looked at differently. Obviously there still needs to be a lot of conversation and negotiation, but at times people need to approach that cautiously.
Okay, no, I understand that, and so Russell, if you're online as well, because could you give us your thoughts on this conversation here? Because last month, of course, you made a very good, very impassioned talk that we all took to heart about the board has to really get involved, and we should be elevating issues to city council, and but we don't want to overstep, like Kristen's saying, and play our hand too early. What can I ask your thoughts here?
Yeah, I would be happy to. And if I caused any trouble last time, sorry. Here's what I was thinking about this whole thing. Usually, the first plan I think would be sit down as a board in a work session, and and maybe you, Brian, and Kristen, get together, and you say, okay, first we're going to look at maybe do like 4 topics, like one of the things that you brought up tonight was like refurbishing park equipment at Snyder, just equipment, land, open spaces, maybe just pick like 3 or 4 topics. And then you have a land use expert or somebody, on staff come in and say, and talk about the different parts of the city, like with Brookman area. it's disconcerting that sometimes I feel that instead of us, the city, saying, and I know that's the development process, hey, here's where we want a park to go. Well, whoever owns that land gets to kind of decide what happens with that land, and that will sometimes, determine where the park goes. It goes, well, wherever they don't want to build a house, that you can put the park over there. But I think that we, as a city, we should try and figure out, well, how can we leverage that a little more so we can, but maybe get back to topic here, as a board, sit down, look at the Brookman area, figure out, well, what's already, look at the plan, but set it aside, and then have Julia Hyduke or somebody from development come in and say, well, here's what is planned right now. Here's the because some of the developers are further along. Here's where the streets are going to go. Here's where the houses are going to go. Here's the open space they're designating. Here is a small park. And then maybe as a board, kind of think that through. Is that enough? Is that what we want? Is there anything else we could do? Same thing with Sherwood West. I know, hey, Kristen, they haven't completely have they wrapped that? They've got another meeting or two, right?
Correct.
I think so. So when that gets finished, then the Parks Board should look at the recommendations of that committee. And not that it's going to be set in stone, but same thing, kind of figure out, one, like a couple of years ago, I think maybe it was not that long ago. Everything goes by so fast. Like Kristen, I can't believe it's been 15 years at Snyder Park. I mean, oh my gosh, I've gotten so sick on that twirly ride so many times. That one has definitely got to go. I mean, because I just can't help myself. I go and I get sick every time. I know it's going to happen, but I still have to do it. Anyway, so we figure out, the mayor mentioned a few years back that if we're going to do a park over there, maybe it should be like a Snyder level kind of park, but not the same amenities, different, but big and cool and unique. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that the Parks Board can kind of, perk on in that kind of a work session. Maybe just and that's what we do in February. We're going to have our council goal setting session the first weekend of February. And that's what we tend to focus on. Generally, what are the big areas? And then we start to get a little more specific about individual goals and things we want staff to work on. But staff is a great resource for this. They can help you, like Craig and his team, Public Works, and Kristen, all of her decades of experience, can help the board sort of see. And as I mentioned last time in my impassioned speech, the sky's the limit. I mean, hey, we'd love to see this over here, City Council. And so someone mentioned, I think it was Steve, that, well, how do we get the money? Lobbying. Have you not heard about lobbying? Yeah. So you go to a city council. I'm a city council member, or you as a board firmly decide we really want this thing to happen. That has an influencing effect on the city manager and then what he brings to the budget committee and testify at the budget committee. One of the nights will be open to the public, and you can come and plead your case, a couple of you or one of you, and say, here's, as a board, we talked about it. We really want this project to move forward. Those are the kinds of things that, you can do. The mayor, sometimes when we have a work session and we talk about these kinds of things that might even remotely relate to the Parks Board, he will always say, what does the Parks Board think about this? He's always asking that. So I think what you decide. So I would say work session, maybe before you have it, have some thoughts. Maybe you don't necessarily need the whole, I know Brian wants to go on a field trip, but maybe the whole group doesn't have to go, but maybe Brian and Kirsten, you get together and figure out, okay, let's pick 2 or 3 people or volunteer tonight. And then give them an assignment. Okay, you go to this park, you go to this, and just kind of go check some things out. Maybe some pictures. Just don't encroach on private property. Don't do that. Don't freak out the neighbors. Honestly, I just when I was going through Brookman, to drive around. You can go to the end of Redford. In the end of Redford, right in front of Dave Sweeney's house, right in front of Neil Shannon's house, and park and walk 25 feet. And right there is the Grove, the old Grove. Just look. And if you take a hard right, this is one of those paths that Steve was talking about. There's this gorgeous trail right behind those houses to your right. It goes all the way back to Sunset. It's amazing back there, just amazing. And it's not well signed. So I agree with all of those things that you talked about, but you're gonna have to figure out, like you're doing right now, what's the priority. And maybe not all signs, but maybe pick where are 2 signs that would have the greatest impact on people walking in the trails. Pick 2 and maybe do
Right.
2. And if they're kind of the same, okay, they don't have to. I don't think we have to come with a whole big wayfinding plan. I think the concept is wayfinding. Pick some signs that are kind of close. Kristen mentioned that they've already kind of tried to keep things consistent, and maybe go with that. So.
Right.
That's
So
my
thanks, Russell. So that's good.
30-second
So
response. Yes.
let's I think we should then just schedule a work session, and like Kristen, like you say, if it's not a field trip, I'm a fan of field trips, but if we don't have to have the work session be the field trip, we can do the field trips, as Russell said, individually. I can drive around and take pictures, and then I think we should schedule a work session at some point to get into this in more detail than we can cover in these board meetings. So I haven't done that before, as far as I know. So I look to you, Kristen, to how do we schedule that so it's in line with the city procedures?
So I know before, Brian, you mentioned potentially wanting to do a Saturday, and I guess just seeing if that works for people, if people are up for doing that, or if we want to do an evening. Obviously, the Saturday, we were thinking more if there was a field trip and wanting to make sure that we had daylight.
Yeah,
but
no, if we're not going to do a trip out as a group, then wouldn't need to do it on. We wouldn't need to take somebody's, everybody's Saturday. We can do it on the evening after work. That's okay.
So if we want to keep it separately than our regular February meeting, we could just select some dates and send out a doodle poll and see what will work for people, and put some options out there and give people some time to check their schedules.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do that in a few weeks.
Okay.
That'll give us a chance for people, if they're interested, to. We wouldn't need the whole board, but anybody who's interested then could, as Russell said, could drive out to the places that we're talking about, take some pictures, walk around a little bit incognito, and just check out the potential areas, and we could. So are we allowed to email to the whole board, or how, Kristen, you mentioned a couple of times, like we're not supposed to email the whole board unless we're in a meeting, or how does that work? How do we coordinate?
Yeah, if everybody starts coordinating and having a conversation, then that ends up being a quorum having a meeting. So what we can do is, I mean, if there's one bit of information that's being sent out, that's one thing. It's when that conversation starts happening and the back and forth that triggers it, is you're now having essentially a virtual or online meeting. So if you want to send stuff to me, I can compile it and put it all in an email and send it back out to everybody. That might be the easiest way to do it.
Okay, so I'll do that then. I'll email Kristen this week with some ideas of places that we could potentially go on our own, and then she can email out the board, and then we can, as Kristen said, we can send out a poll to find the best time that works for everybody for a work session that we can hopefully all get together, masked or whatever, so we can actually sit down and go over the map in person and come up with our suggestions based on sort of the groundwork that people have done on their own, and then maybe have a 90-minute meeting some evening sometime and go through it and hash this out. I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Great, everybody. Thanks. I didn't want to miss anybody on this topic, or anybody else who wanted to say anything but didn't feel that they were that they had a chance. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so now we are, so we'll do that. So you'll be hearing back from Kristen, I'm sure, over the over this next week or 10 days. We'll try to get that out for everybody. I think we have some good momentum here. I think that was a good discussion that we went through. Thanks everybody for contributing. Next on the agenda is Harry with tree removal.
Okay, so this week or this month's tree removal is in the open space behind 17898 Southwest Inkster Road. The arborist recommends the removal of one 55-foot tall volunteer cottonwood, and the reasoning behind this is there is a root upheaval, and the tree is leaning over the residence. That potentially, as you know, cottonwoods lose a lot of limbs and potential for damage to the property, not only property but people as well. So the recommendation is to take the tree down and then plant a different species within the open space in this location.
All right, great. Any questions or concerns from the board on that one? All right, great. So I'll if there are no objections, I'll move to approve the tree removal request. We have anybody who can second?
Second.
Right. Thanks, Brian. Well, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. So that's approved.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll make sure we'll get that taken care of.
Steve, I see your hand up. Did you have a question?
No, I don't think I actually knew I did that, but
Okay.
I can always comment on trees. And last month, if you'll remember, my comment about cottonwoods, and so my only thought beyond the 55-foot one is there are numerous places next to paths and things that have 5 to 8 foot ones that should disappear before they become a problem and become expensive to remove and have no potential to harm anyone. So if my hand is up, I don't want it up, so I'll figure that out. Thank you.
Yeah, just to bring everybody up to speed, there was also a tree that was removed the last month or so that was along the walking trail between, like, right by the library there, that had tipped over. So the crew came in and removed that one. I assume they deemed that one was kind of an emergency because it was leaned over quite a bit. So it was, like I said, right there by the library. So they took that one out real quick. So thanks for the team to taking care of that one.
Hey, Steve, it's Rodney. If you want to go for a walk sometime and identify a bunch of those trees, we could spin our own tree removals.
Sorry, Harry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make sure it wasn't pertaining to the trees.
All right. And okay, so that's number 7. Number 8 is the parks maintenance update, also with Harry.
Okay. So we all know the last couple of weeks the weather hasn't been the greatest. So this week we've as parks we've gone through, well, actually last week and this week gone through our trails, but we did it again today, going through our trails and our parks, looking for any debris of tree damage or widowmakers, anything that could potentially cause a hazard. So we're keeping up on that. I know last month I said that we got the glue lamps in for the bridge at Stella Olson. Those have been installed. So the rotten boards at that bridge there in the backside of Stella Olson between Villa has been replaced. So those rotten boards have been taken out. Also, as well as the parks boards, we know last night in the melting snow, our water levels have climbed. As we know, the low-lying trail area at Stella Olson, we have some more water coming up. So we're keeping an eye on that. I did notice this afternoon on my way home that the water has receded a little bit than it was this morning on the bridges to the island. So we're keeping an eye on the water levels. The bridge underneath Washington Street is still flooded underneath the staircases. So we're still keeping an eye on the water levels there. Hopefully they'll start to go down more this week. To go along with Steve's comment about maintenance, we are, as a parks crew, we do our playground inspections weekly. This time of year, we do it every 2 weeks, but in the summertime, we do playground inspections every week, but we're continuing to do that as well throughout into the, for our equipment inspections and make sure everything's safe, and if things need to be replaced, we try to stay on it before it causes a hazard. So with weather depending, we're still trying to keep our, getting into our deep pruning and cleaning up of our parks to get them ready for the springtime and summer season. So that's where we're at parks maintenance right now.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, number 9 is council updates.
All right, I'll try to keep it brief. I don't know if it's possible or not, but hey, so kudos really to the board. I know it might feel, I was thinking about this when I first got on the planning commission like 11, 12 years ago. It felt odd. I didn't really know exactly, but luckily, there were other people who've been on before for years, and they kind of helped. And I did some research on my own, and I finally got my group. So I think, it is hard to understand, well, just exactly what role do we play, in the city's decision to do things. That could be something you might review at that work session. So right here on the, if you go to the city's website, it talks about the Parks Board and the duties, and what's expected is listed right there. You should review that. Definitely the Parks Master Plan, wear it out, make the city get you a new one. I mean, use it, mark it up, flag it, circle it. What's this? What does this mean? And when you're looking at that matrix that Kristen was reviewing, the 1 to 5 year action plan, which is near the beginning in the executive summary, and you see those letters, letters on the left, like A2, C6, you might be thinking, if you go to the strategies section of the plan, anything that's A is there, like A6, endorse the 10-minute walk campaign is under strategy A. So, and that's like page 31, 32. So, when you get comfortable with what's in, there's a lot of work, but if you get very comfortable with that, it really does become kind of like your user guide being on the Parks Board. I love Brian's idea that every month we sort of review the projects we're working on right now. How is that coming? Have we missed something? The seasons are changing. What else should we be talking about? I love that. And, before that work session happens, if someone's going to maybe consider Sherwood West, well, there's a whole Sherwood West page, and it's filled with megabytes of stuff. So carefully, but go review some of that information. Where are they right now? What did it look like, all those years ago? And what does it look like now? And just kind of get a sense of where might a park go? What are they thinking? Same thing with Brookman. If you just drive down Brookman carefully, and then look at there's potentially a Brookman Road realignment that's going to happen. That's going to get straightened out. That might affect where things go. Those are the kind of things that you can do just as a citizen. Just walk around and kind of be aware. If you're ever out on a walk and you're on a trail and you see something, Kristen loves it. Send her a picture. Say, hey, what's this? What's going on? Absolutely. Make sure she knows about it. And then she can say, yeah, we know about it. Oh, that's a new one, and send it to Public Works. Whomever can help us with that. So absolutely, if you're going to be on the Parks Board, get out, enjoy the parks, note things that the city needs to be aware of, and don't be afraid to speak and speak your mind, like when it comes up to, like the budget. And I want to ask Harry 2 things. First of all, Harry, what exactly is a widowmaker? I mean, I think I know, but what's your definition of a widowmaker?
Well, what I was talking about pertaining is a branch that is up in the tree that has been broken off, that a wind or thing can make it just fall. And
so wrong,
it's an old logger's term.
Widowmaker. That's the event. No, I just found it's not like it's an endearing word, but I just thought that's such a public works word. I love it. I absolutely love that. And the other thing I want to ask you, Harry, at Snyder Park, have you gotten that little spinny thing and spun around?
I could be brutally honest, no, because I follow that those are actually for 5 to 12-year-olds,
That's
and I
right.
don't fall in that age bracket.
Gotta follow the rules.
I'm not going to ask you any more questions. That's it.
I
That's
think Harry might have a little lawyer in him.
yeah, maybe that's what it is. Brian, I don't have anything else. Oh, except that, we're kind of the beginning of the year, so we have some sort of like just regular business items that we have to talk about tomorrow night at our council meeting. But in February, like the 4th and 5th, we're going to meet as a council and kind of figure out what's the next set of goals, which will we have a facilitator coming in to help us with that, which will help direct to some extent what the city manager does in terms of allocating projects, resources, funding, those kinds of things. It is a big, living, dynamic process, but citizens' input along the way at the right time can have really a dramatic impact on what gets planned, what gets done. So anybody have any questions at all? If not, I say great job, good work. Thank you. That's all I have, Brian.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for your update. And we'll be looking forward to more updates from council through the year. It's always a highlight of the meeting. Any other agenda items that anybody wants to bring up for tonight? I do appreciate everybody calling in. I know that these online meetings have been going on longer than we had thought they would, but everybody's, doing a great job and making the best of it. And maybe we can do a work session in person just with the masks on and everything and actually get to see people. And, we always hope that maybe as the spring comes, this will all maybe start being behind us. So we'll get maybe back to normal, but we've said that before and hasn't worked. So
That's what we
we'll
have.
see. We'll always stay hopeful for 22, right? And see what happens. Great, but if there are any other, nobody else has any agenda topics, we'll just, we can close the meeting for tonight. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Scott.
everyone.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
Happy New Year.
Bye.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Good to see you guys again.